Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as mentioned previously, as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD1100 or C# programming class, I'm doing a series of video presentations based on our textbook, which is Muroc C# 2015. I went back and redid several lectures on Chapter 12 as we get into the object-oriented programming section. Remember, we're skipping Chapter 13, how to work with indexers, delegates, events, and operations, or operators. So I'm going to jump into Chapter 14, which is on inheritance. Alright, I'm going to get into that right now. And again, I'm going to go over the PowerPoints and then go through some examples as well. So what do we have here? Our objectives. Use any of the features of inheritance that are presented in this chapter as you develop classes for your applications. Kind of the two standard ways of doing C#, really any kind of programming language that has that allows you to use inheritance. Two classic examples are, one are like using a banking type of example where you have like an account class, then underneath that you have inherited from that maybe a savings account, and a checking account, and an IRA account, etc. And the other way of doing it is with employees, where you've got an employee class, and then underneath that you might have hourly employees, piecework employees, commission employees, etc. That kind of thing. We're going to do one or both of those. I'm not sure what right now. So, as far as our knowledge objectives, we want to explain how inheritance is used within the .NET framework, explain how you might want to override the toString, equals, and get hash code as you develop for a new class, and these, the toString especially, but also the equals and the get hash code, those are built in. I believe they're in the system namespace, so we get those. We can always override those. Describe the use of protected and virtual access modifiers for the members of a class. Describe the concept of polymorphism. Describe the use of a type class. Describe the use of explicit casting when working with objects of a base class and its derived classes. Finally, distinguish between an abstract class and a sealed class. So, when you look at this right here, and we look at the example, we've got a base class, as you can see right here. And this base class has in it, alright, according to this, with our Systems Windows Forms class, it has all this stuff in it. Alright, now we've got a product maintenance for a new product. Alright, so we get everything in here, we automatically get in here. If we go and inherit from system.windows.forms.form, which is what we'll do. Then we can add our own things in here, such as our text boxes for our code, product code for our product description and our product price, buttons so that we're able to save what we're working on and to close the application. Alright, plus we can get a product where we've got to get new product in here. So again, as it says, these are all public properties and public methods. They all get inherited, and then we add our own properties and methods to it. That's kind of how this works. So when you look under the object namespace, you can see all the different things that you inherit. I'm not going to go over any of these, but basically it's the ability to do virtually all of the different controls that we have talked about, worked with for the entire semester. So, system object, you can see the things that are in here. To be honest with you, the one that I've used probably 99% of the time in here has been the toString. Alright? Because by default, if you say, for example, system dot, or not even a system dot, if I say write line and I give it the name of an object, usually I'm either going to get some gibberish, or I might get the address of where the object lives or something else. But by overriding the toString method, I can have print out whatever it is I want to print out. Alright, so this is the product maintenance that we talked about before. Now when you look here, if you look, What's different? Well, we're saying every product has a code, a description, a price, and the ability to display its text. And there they are, and there they are. But in addition, a book has an author where software has a version. All right. So in other words, both book and software are inheriting from product. And in addition to the things they get naturally, they're also adding in the book case a string for the author, and in the software case, a string for the version. All right. Plus, we're going to have this stuff in here. Again, this will become more prevalent and it'll be more important once we get in and start talking about the database stuff. Okay. All right. So here's our public class product. What's new in here that we haven't already seen? Well, again, we're using the auto-implemented properties in here, which is something new. All right. So we've got public string code get set, public string description get set, public string price get set, and our get display text, which is accepting a separator and basically is returning. So this method right here is returning a string that is this: the code plus that separator plus the description plus that separator plus the price formatted to currency. All right, access modifiers. Some of these we started talking about really earlier in the semester, and some last chapter. Public. If you make something public, technically you're making it available to any and all classes, not just your classes, but any and all classes. Typically, methods are public. Typically, data is private. Now, there's always exceptions. For example, you might have a private method in that if I've got a public method that in order to do its job has to call another method, there probably is no sense in showing that, so I could make that a private method that got called. All right? And protected. Protected basically goes down the class hierarchy. So if you can imagine that I created, let's suppose for a second that I created a class hierarchy that I called animal. All right? And one of the things I put inside of the animal was I put in a protected method that was called speak. All right. Then underneath that I had a dog class that I created and a cat class that I created and a horse class, let's say, that I created, those three. All right. All of those could go and override whatever was the default for speak, because dogs speak differently than cats, speak differently than horses, etc. So when you're working with protected, it goes down the hierarchy. So wherever I've defined something, they can change it, and any child class from that class or child class of the child class, etc., can change it. If something is internal, it's available only to classes within what's called the current assembly. All right, I believe that's the default if you say nothing. Protected internal, available to the current class, the derived classes, or the derived classes in other assemblies. Never worked with that. Finally, we have private, which, as it says, is available only within the containing class. All right, so when you want to start working with inheritance, the key thing in here is to use the colon. All right, so this means subclass this inherits from this. So for instance, if I had this, if I had public class dog colon animal, that would mean that the dog class inherits from animal. Now, when you do this, you might want the child class to get some of its information from the parent class. And in order to be able to do that, then you use what's called base, and you pass whatever parameters you want to pass. All right, from here you pass into the parent. All right. Now, if you have a method name or a property value, by default it's going to use the one of the subclass. But if you want to use the parent's method name or property name, you use base dot. All right. Finally, as it says on the bottom here, to hide a non-virtual method or property, you say public new. To override, which means that there's one that already exists, but you want to override it, you use public override. All right, so let's take a look at the example that's here. This is the code for a book class. I'm going to go back, no pun intended, into my book. And kind of work along with what's there. So what do we have? We're saying that a book is a type of product. When you work with inheritance, it is an is-a or an is-an relationship. In other words, a book is a product. All right, and the other one we'll have later, software is a product. If it's an is-a relationship, it's basically you're saying inheritance. So what are we changing in here? We've got a new property called author, get set, and notice when we call the constructor for this, we've got still string code, string description, string author, decimal price, but we are saying, hey, parent, product, you take care of the code, you take care of the description, you take care of the price, I'll take care of the author. Not sure, unless it's because they're all the same data type, why they put string author third there, but they did. All right, and here we're handling the author. This dot author equals author. Okay. And the other thing that we have to add in here is we are overriding, we're creating our own constructor here, but we are overriding the get display text. And how are we overriding it? We're adding this. And that is the author. Now again, there's different ways to override this. They're showing one way here, they're showing another way here. I am not of the mindset that I think, oh yeah, you should do it this way, or no, you should do it this way. I believe in you, for lack of better words, trying to do some things and seeing what you think when you're working with them, which seems to make the most sense to you. And that which seems to make the most sense to you is that which I believe you should be using. All right, so here are three versions of the get display text. Notice the first is a virtual. That virtual hides the parents. All right. This one overrides the parents. All right. As always, and I've mentioned this to you before, these two are the same thing, but here it's the book class and here it's the software class. There's always more than one way of doing the same thing. I hate that saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but it really is true here. There's always more than one way of, coming up with some kind of result. Bottom line is, in the end, is it the result you want? And if it is, the way that you get there most of the time is going to be up to you. Now, some ways of getting there are going to result in more code or maybe more obfuscated code. In other words, maybe more complex code than others. I would try to shy away from that. But something that I think is easy to understand, you may not think is easy to understand, and vice versa. All right, so here, notice now we're instantiating a new book object. So again, we need to put in there, because we said we want it in this order, the product code, the description, the author, and the price. And for software, it is the product code, the description, the version, and the price. All right. Then we've got product P, P equal B, and then we're printing out everything. As it says, this is going to call the book's display text, and P equals S, this is going to call the software's display text. All right. So I do have the new one on here. I've got it up and loaded and it's ready to go. So the product maintenance form, this form that you see right here, looks the same as what we had before, with the exception of that the way that it's writing this is it's putting the author's name at the end if it's a book, and it's putting the software version number, version plus the number at the end if it's software. So how do we figure this out? Well, as you'll notice if you look up on the screen here, if it's a book, so if we have chosen book there, we're going to have a form that comes up that's going to have code, description, author, and price. And if we have software chosen, it's going to be a code, description, and rather than author, it'll have version and then price. So other than author versus version, these two things look identical to one another, except in this case we've chosen book, and in this case we've chosen software. So as we look at the code for our product class, to my knowledge, looking at this slide right here, nothing has changed. This looks the same as what we looked at and worked with earlier. All right. This looks the same. This looks the same. Now, here we're coming in and we're using the word virtual. All right. We're going to let the system basically figure out, based on what's been passed into it, which get display text it's supposed to call. All right. And again, what's the big difference? In the case of the book, it's going to put the author's name in parentheses, and in the case of software, it's going to put the word version followed by the version number. So here's our code for the book class. Again, notice public class book : product, meaning book is the child class, also called the derived class, and product is the parent class, also known as the, I don't know, it's got different names. It can be called a parent, it can be called, book can be called a child class, a derived class. Let's just go with those, that should be good. So again, for book, we've added this private string author, and we have made a change in our constructor to tell the base, meaning, again, right here, this is saying, hey, product, you handle these, and I'll handle this. All right. We've also overridden the get display text so that it puts that author's name in parentheses. Then when we look at the code for the software class, we see something similar. Software, like book before it, all right, inherits from product. Rather than having private string author as we had for the book, it's now private string version. And again, we're still telling the parent, which is product, you handle the code, description, and price, we'll handle the version. And again, we are overriding the toString method, so it's going to put the word version followed by the actual version number. All right. Now we're right around halfway through this, but I'm at 19 minutes, so I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to pick it up, and hopefully we can do this in 2 lectures. I can and will be back shortly.